All right. Housekeeping stuff first, I guess, is perhaps we have not one, but two minutes to approve, one from the May 10th meeting and one from the May 24th meeting. So hopefully you all had an opportunity to review those. So if I could have a motion on, let's take, do you want to do them all at the same time or do you want to do one at a time? Any preference?
I'll move them both.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Yes, I picked up something on the
Sure.
second minutes,
Go
trying
ahead.
to find them. Do you have them?
Is that the second one?
Yeah.
I don't know the first one.
On the second page, third paragraph from the bottom, it says there are a number of questions about existing and new stairs in the elevator. Code requires that stairs and elevators must be in separate enclosures, which is currently not the case. I think it is the case. The stair and the elevators are in separate enclosures. Yes. So that just needs to be corrected.
Okay.
That was all.
Do you want me to fix that and send it in again, Bob?
No, we'll just amend it.
Yeah, I'll just amend it.
Okay.
It's not a problem. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor? None in favor? Good, thank you. All right. A couple other housekeeping pieces. So Carol sent out the press release for everybody to have. Do we want to approve that? Should we need it, or would we rather wait and see kind of, we've got some things happening next week. So I'm of the mindset of wanting to try to keep things moving in the event that, we need to. But it's not my decision, it's our decision. So wanted to get a sense from the group that if we felt like the press release was great and we wanted to approve it to release, that we would be ready to do so in the event that we can move forward.
Sure,
But that's
yeah.
open for discussion. Okay.
Would that be more of a school board decision, Winter?
Well, this would be, the committee would be approving it to send to the school board to review and approve. Yeah, we wouldn't be saying, we obviously need the board approval to say, yes, we think you should send that out. So that's all I'm asking for.
I don't know if were we gonna try to send the survey out at the same time?
I think so, unless anybody else feels differently. I think it makes sense that they run hand in hand.
Probably not everybody, I sent that out, but probably not everybody got a chance to really review it, and it would still need to get copied over.
Page and then
Okay, yeah,
It would
that's,
still need to get copied over to the district.
okay.
So maybe we can look at those separately.
I think that makes sense. Okay, so do we just want to move on the press release? Are we good with that? We have, Marcia has already moved. Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
Meg, second. Any other comments?
I had just one, I'm trying to open it up here.
Sure.
Find it. I mean, I'm trying to find part of this.
I have a hard copy.
I have it on my computer, I'm just trying to find the spot, that's all.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. Well, this is really, I don't even know if it's worth it, but it's in the first paragraph, actually. It's the last sentence. The intent is to have a plan ready for consideration by the voters. I felt like, should we say concept plan? Or is a plan, is that too strong of a, will people read into that, or, I don't know.
Anybody have any thoughts?
That was
You're thinking maybe more conceptual versus.
Yeah, like.
You mean what they're going to be voting on is not?
It tends to have a plan ready for consideration, like, I don't know.
The charter says,
Is that verbatim? from the
we will
chart?
make a project recommendation to the school board and develop a concept for repurposing the MET building that will go before voters. So I can change it to concept if you feel. I don't know what the group feels, it doesn't matter.
That was my only thought. It seemed, the plan seemed a little strong, like definitive.
Seems like it might be a little more in line with, if we're talking about concept with the charter, correct?
Yeah, what does the group think?
Sure.
Right? Okay, so we'll make that change. All right, thank you for that. Any other comments, questions regarding the press release?
So we're voting on to
Moving it
send it to the
board.
school board. Is that what your motion is? Or you just motion to approve it?
To approve it, and we'll send it if the time's appropriate.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. This is one of my wacky ideas, so I'll confess right out of the gate. Because there's going to be a fair amount of voting activity next week, I just wanted to ask the committee, regardless of how things go, should we meet next week on the 14th and determine, are we moving forward? Do we need to meet again? I don't want to preempt anything. I didn't know if it made sense to wait until our next follow-up meeting, which would be in 2 weeks, or if we felt like it made sense to meet literally next week because of the vote that's taking place on the 11th and the 12th. Just an idea, I'm not married to it, I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Me to do what, though? I mean, just to say, yes, we're going forward, or not? Can we do that by email?
Hey, Bob,
Good,
did we vote on approving the press release?
yes, I thought we
No,
did.
we didn't.
No, we
Oh,
just.
we didn't?
Oh,
Oh,
didn't
my
second it.
apologies. Oh.
That's okay, I thought your wacky idea. The press
Oh,
release.
no, yeah, my wacky
So I
idea.
was like waiting for that.
So sorry, my apologies. I think we got the first and you had a second, right?
Yep.
Yeah?
All right, and any other comments? So all those in favor? My apologies, I thought we were.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Carol.
So what do we anticipate coming out of the 11th and the 12th? That, are we anticipating that there would be changes to what we're doing? Are we anticipating that there would be additional information that we would need to go forward? And I'm fine with leaving out.
Yeah, candidly, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know, from a board's perspective, if you folks feel like there should be anything, or would be anything that
I
we should
think
take into
that
consideration.
if the warrant passes on Monday, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marcia, then we just keep going.
Mhm.
If the warrant fails, then the whole middle school project is off.
Yeah.
It's off. So where that leaves us, I think then it would go to the board, and the board would then give guidance on whether we wanted us to continue or.
So if it passes, we'd keep plugging away. If it fails, then we've got to step back and wait for the board to make a decision
Right,
and
and our
re-examine
next
the
meeting is
charge.
the
And
20th.
we wouldn't
yeah.
keep going after that.
Actually, you know what, I take that back, our meeting is the 11th.
Yeah.
We're
that's-
meeting
that's
right
Monday.
after
That's right.
that vote, so we will know on the 11th. Did you want to add something?
Only that I don't see the benefit in us meeting next week, because I think whatever happens, if it passes and the new middle school's being full steam ahead, then we're just going to meet at our regular time. If it doesn't, then the board will be the ones that might give us redirection. I don't think we don't chart the course of our own future as a committee, the board do, so I just say, give the board and Maria more time to discuss whether they tell us, because we're not going to, if they say stop, we're not going to keep going,
Sure.
or vice versa, so.
Unless we just enjoy each other's company and we just want to meet.
We do,
Yeah, there is that.
as much as I,
She said
No,
unless
I was
we
being
enjoy-
silly. I said, unless we enjoy each other's company so much, we
Oh,
just want to
well,
be
yes.
every other week.
We had nothing else better to do.
Right.
Okay, again, I'm just throwing it out there,
Yeah.
just as an
No, it's a
idea. I
good
want to make sure that we tried to keep and maintain communication where we needed it, and don't need to do anything where we don't. So, thank you for that.
So assuming we do meet again, when is the next meeting
The
date?
next meeting will be in 2 weeks.
21st.
Okay.
And with this round of minutes, I'll make sure that Robin sends out an updated calendar so that everybody's clear.
Yeah,
on it.
because what's on the website now is today and July 12th, and that's it.
If only. So I'll get that clear with Robin
Okay.
tomorrow. Thank you.
Bob, I'm not able to be here at the next meeting.
I'm sorry?
No, on the 21st, I'm not able to be here.
Okay. Okay, moving on. If we look at the agenda, the first item that we had was to follow up on the zoning discussion. I don't know if you had an opportunity to visit with
Yeah, I had a good conversation with Jeremy yesterday.
Okay.
We had a chance to kind of talk through what this committee was working on, some of the ideas that had been kind of thrown around for that basement space, I think is the one that primarily is of concern. He thought that a zoning change was the appropriate way to go. We did spend a little bit of time talking about the couple different zones that might be appropriate for this use, both based on some of the concerns that we had heard in this committee for the types of things that might be here, and also his experience with some of the things that he's heard around town. So there were 2 zones that are nearby that would give you some flexibility on what you could have in that basement. One was the transitional river that we had talked about before. And then the one that he thought might be more appropriate, might be more palatable for both the community and the planning board, was the neighborhood service district, so B4, which actually picks up, as you consider up Washington, I think 3 houses down, there's a small pocket there. So while not contiguous, it was appropriate in that area. So that provided all of the same, or very similar functions for the business use, which I think is primarily what you're looking at. Still gives all of the municipal and institutional uses that would be needed, so the public, private schools, quasi-municipal facilities that had churches and community buildings. So all of those things that you had talked about with the teen center and all of those other components would still be very viable. But it had a little bit more narrow focus on the commercial uses. It eliminated all those heavy industrial pieces, but left in small offices, professional services, had neighborhood stores, inns, some things that you wouldn't be interested in, but it really focused that list down from the big, long industrial commercial list that was in the transitional river. He recommended that we come in with a small group and do an in-person meeting with him in the next couple weeks. So be happy to come up on one of my trips up here, and I'm not sure who else would be appropriate from this committee. And then the only other thing we have to remember is that if we do change to that B4, they have a height restriction of 30 feet. We just have to remember to correct the height for the new middle school going forward. That was one of those things that we had changed in this current V for this specific zone. So we would have to add that language in through that process. So it's something on the back of my mind, but if I forget, someone can kick me under the table.
Because it would move the whole property into the B4.
It would move the entire property, and we would have to make similar or whatever was recommended by town council and the planning board to address that height limitation. We don't want to take 2 steps forwards and 1 back. So I think the next meeting would be in person at his office sometime daytime hours.
He's very knowledgeable, didn't you find?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
He
I
was,
like him a lot. I think
A
he's
great resource, and he's very quickly gotten up to speed on your ordinances, the maps, and had some good guidance. So I think it's definitely a worthwhile thing for this project to get that going, and then it'll build consensus before we get to the planning board, and should make that process much easier.
Okay, great.
It was a good conversation.
Great, thank you for that information. All right, any other questions or comments on the zoning?
Can you just do a really quick summary? What are the next steps then to change the zoning? There's this informal meeting.
Yeah,
But then-
that's the start of the process. So we need to meet with him, go through, develop the plan, he can vet it through the appropriate town staff. So that way, before we make that application to the planning board, that there's a clear and concise process. Once this committee decides that that's the direction to go, the zoning change, the school board, I think, is the one that would have to formally make the
Authorize that,
application.
yeah.
So the school board's the applicant, we could act as your technical advisors on that to go through that process, similar to what we did for the height change. But I think it would take board action on that.
And what's the length of that, duration of that process?
It's up to the planning board.
Depends on
They,
scheduling.
some of it's scheduling, but they need to do public notice, a hearing, a meeting, then it goes off to the select board, who does public notice, a hearing, and then it goes off to a town vote.
I guess the only reasons I'm asking is like, how does that process affect the rest of our work on the committee? And is that something that, do we need to have that done prior to putting our August 1st proposal to the board or prior to the November vote? Like, what's the sequence then?
My sense is that if we get this process started over the summer, that if we can check all of those boxes, the hearings and things, that they could call the vote and have it in November at the same time that this is being voted on, so that you're educating people once for the zoning change and once for whatever this concept plan that comes out of this committee is. So, I mean, ultimately, it will be up to the Board of Selectmen to schedule that vote and how they choose to do it, but it seems like along that course that might be an appropriate time to encourage.
Yeah, it's always good to do it on the actual ballot, that when there's already an election and
Yep.
things are already going on. But before when we needed to, we fast-tracked the height change. So if we got, into something, we could possibly do the other process too.
Don't you like that?
It's really awesome. It's really
So,
wonderful.
do we, all this committee needs to do then is just understand it enough to make a recommendation August 1st with all other recommendations that the board move forward with a zone change, and this is what you should do?
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and then downstream of August 1st, the school board would act on that in August, September, October, maybe all the way into November.
Yeah, if we get the package together and ready to go with Jeremy, he'll give us a pretty good guidance on when he thinks we should start that process with the planning board. I mean, it does, it's probably upwards of a month per entity. Planning board is gonna be a month, and then selectmen, I think is gonna, it's 2 meetings for you? 'Cause you do the
Yeah.
hearing and then a second meeting, so that's,
I think technically,
And when does it have to be in order to get on the ballot for November?
is it like, usually like 6 weeks?
yeah, it's 45 days.
That's if it goes on the ballot route. So that would be the only reason why maybe it would have to get fast-tracked through a special town meeting kind of thing,
But maybe that's something that the school board could, if you make a recommendation, if you're going to rent the basement, we have to do something for a zone change. So starting that process now isn't going to hurt anything, if this committee so desired.
So does it sound like the next thing then is to get a subgroup or 1 or 2 people from this group to meet with the zoning?
Yep.
Make the decision on which zone we go, be ready to go with that, understand the timing from him, and get moving. I mean, and that sounds like we wait till after Monday and then meet with them.
Yep. And I think it ultimately will be the town and the planning board making the decision of which zone will go in based on the appropriateness, but it'll be good to have that conversation with Jeremy to start, just to kind of get him up to speed.
they can't request a specific zone?
I think we can, but his encouragement was to involve town staff so that it's not just a community coming, or the applicant coming in saying this is what I want, but go through the cohesive kind of process to make it as well thought out and kind of palatable for everyone. So it's going to be a partnership one way as we go through this.
Okay. Any other questions?
Only that, just doing then the quick calendaring in my head as you were talking, like, is it something that is this piece being part of our full proposal too late if it has to go through a planning board, 2 rounds of a select board to meet, to then get on paper 6 weeks before a November election? not that like the MET can't move ahead without this, but if the concept is to have some leasing arrangement in the basement that does hinge on the zoning, and we want to get it all wrapped into November, I don't know if we need to have that meeting and then as a committee, can we bump it to the board quicker? I'm not trying to create a full sense of urgency at all. Like, I don't want to be urgent about any of it, but I'm just thinking if we decided as a committee that both the zoning and the whole concept need to kind of be on the same ballot, there seemed like there were a lot of steps of committees that only meet once a month that it needs to get through before you get there.
You could do it tonight if you wanted to. I mean, to give yourself the most long-term flexibility, a zone change is needed. So if there are any inclinations that this process will result in a leased entity, we should start the process.
So
We
should
don't
kick-
meet in July,
Right.
so
Right.
our meeting in June is,
So your next meeting will be August anyway for the school board, basically, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not going to get it.
Unless we have an emergency meeting.
right, or a special meeting. Sometimes we could always,
A lot of those.
yeah, it's called.
Are there any
Maybe it
downsides?
should be ice cream with me, maybe it,
The 21st. We might at that 21st meeting then be wanting to say as a committee, we do want the board to just be aware of the need for this zoning change, that we recommend it, and they might need to consider calling a special meeting of whatever kind. So at least then it's away from us and at that level, which might need, the mechanics of that might need to get going. But we probably don't need to decide it tonight because we're still kind of waiting for this next week anyway. Gives us a couple of weeks to meet with hopefully within 2 weeks we can meet with the planning guy.
I think so.
And then next time we make a final decision on that if everything's moving ahead.
Yeah.
Or we could just adjust the agenda depending, if, let's say, if the vote passes, we have our meeting, and then we could put an adjustment on the agenda to ask about this. And then we'd have that board maybe
You mean
tentative.
the agenda after the vote? on the
Right,
agenda?
so the district meeting closes, and then we go into a regular board meeting. And so we have an agenda for that, so, I mean,
That
we
would be
could
good to
add
have on
that.
there.
Add that,
Add that to that as an agenda item, and then you're ready to move.
yeah.
And if you don't,
And then if it doesn't
then on a
pass,
vote,
then
doesn't pass,
it's
then
moved.
scratch the agenda.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that is a good idea.
So if you're gonna,
You want me to ask him?
Sure.
I didn't know if you have a communication with her, but.
No, both you and Marcia. are
agenda
kind of
items for board members, no?
So feel free to.
Certainly.
Protocol.
Who wants to attend with me next?
I'd like to go. Okay.
Would you put me on the
Sure.
email list, and then
Yep.
I can go? Carmen may want to.
Okay.
Is there a limit in, I'd say this, are there too many people where it becomes a little ridiculous? I mean, is.
I think 2 or 3 is probably fine.
Sure.
I don't think you'd want to get too much more into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not asking for everybody.
Yeah, it's, I don't think it's gonna be a very long conversation. I think it's gonna be pretty straightforward, but it'd be helpful to have a couple people.
Yeah, good, okay.
Carol, do you think that if you are to put that on the agenda for, was that the June 11 meeting? Would you want to get a definitive timeline from the town first to discuss at that meeting? Or are you just talking generally, we need to pursue a zone change and make it happen?
Yeah, I think just pursuing a zone change, and that this committee will be working on the timeline, particularly in light that we're not meeting in July. And so in August, we will have that all flushed out, we'll know exactly, and maybe have even started that process. So,
Yeah, my guess is it'd be tough to get a timeline from the town by Monday night.
Yeah. I mean,
So we'd say we're gonna
could
do
try,
it,
yeah.
and there's some impetus to get it going, and
Yeah, okay.
a good question, yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right, so then we'll have that as an agenda item for the board meeting, and then we'll go from there. Okay, next up I have elevator and stairs decision. so we had Pine State, was that Travis that was
Yep.
here? So, to kind of take a look at the elevator, I don't know, Keith and Mike, if you guys want to talk about kind of the outcome of that. And kind of what our thoughts are in terms of options, I guess, in terms of what we should look at. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, go right ahead.
Go ahead. I see three options there. With maybe some variations on one, and I'll probably kick it over to Tyler here shortly, but basically the three options are to tear it down like the plan was, basically you go back to the old facade. And the other option would be to kind of utilize the shaft because it's there. In talking with Travis from Pine State, the shaft is big enough, you can take measurements, you can put a new cab in it, you can put new equipment, a new piston that goes all the way down on the ground, all the new equipment that would go in the machine room for the pumping of the hydraulic fluid and all that, new controls. So it's very usable as a shaft, bottom line. The thing is, as we've all talked and we understand, that the landing where the doors open up and the stairs come up to, that landing is too small for both of those things to happen at the same time because of clearances on doors and not allowing the elevator to be in an egress stair. So you can't have both. So if you decide you want, so an option two would be to utilize the shaft, utilize the landing in its totality for the elevators, and get rid of the stair. And that presents problems with patching things together and so forth. But you wouldn't have to build a new shaft in the interior to the school, so your shaft is already done, so there's a savings there. And then the third option would be forget about the elevator shaft, build the elevator over where is essentially going to be the new main entrance to the building. Probably a better location for it because of that, but utilize the egress stair, and you don't have to share that landing, so you can make a door from that egress landing that has all the proper clearances. Associated with that, there's all sorts of things to do with the building, whether, if you tear part of this down, that block will be an exterior wall, which is a problem. Tyler pointed out some foundation problems, and I don't know, Tyler, do you have stuff to look at?
Yeah, none of it's pretty, but I brought a bunch of photos that kind of give you an idea of how this thing was put together. Here, I'll hand these around. When you look at the kind of the brick gives it away. There used to be an original stair tower there, and then at some point the elevator shaft I think was added and the stair was removed, and then I think it was 2000 they actually built the addition on top of some of these.
From a cost perspective, all three options, you're going to buy an elevator in all three options. So that's even Steven across all three options. The differences become what has to happen to the outside of the building or foundations to button things up, or what has to happen inside. Like if you don't use this stair, that means you have to build a new one inside, which means you have to cut out the floor and have basically a whole new egress stair shaft going from top to the bottom.
Yep.
So there's costs, there's pluses and minuses and costs with all of them. And I guess I would lean on Tyler to try and wrangle those all together.
Yeah,
to
and
try and
there's
quantify that.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a challenge. We've got some information on how kind of this section of the building was built over, I think, 5 different additions, counting from when the original 1920s, the addition put on top of it, somehow connecting, building on top of this. So it's, when you look at the drawings, unfortunately, it's not this nice straight, but there's going to be a lot of assumptions in there, and some of them we wouldn't know until we started digging when we get in here, unfortunately.
So what if we started with functionality? What's the best option from functionality, and then look at the cost? Go ahead.
I will say from a We had a very brief discussion at the board, and my sense is, you know, the board wants to be very clear that the entrance to this building needs to be by the parking lot.
The main entrance.
The main
Which is
entrance,
what
yeah.
Mike mentioned, right?
So I guess I would ask, you know, why are we even discussing what's on this end? Is there,
Well, I think from a functionality, I think having the elevator on the opposite side is the right place for it. It is gonna be next to the entrance. There's a lot of accessibility challenges on this side, making sure that we're maintaining experience is essentially what they describe it as, that the same entrance that you and I use is the same entrance that a handicapped person uses, that there's not a second door that they have to go into to get into an elevator. There's a lot of challenges on this side. It doesn't mean that we can't get around them. I mean, there's solutions to most things. I think the stair is the piece that maybe becomes more viable, but I think that there's still a lot of unknowns kind of around that kind of strangely constructed corner of this building. But I mean, from our point of view, I think that having an entrance where you come in, there's a stair, an elevator, and easy access for everyone equally is the right answer.
I think the point that Mike made up, sorry, it's okay to just.
You got in there good.
I know, but I'm willing to point. The point that Mike brought up at our last meeting was that the addition was torn down and then stairs were built within the building. And I remember you saying, does anyone see that we already have an existing stair, and is there a way to utilize that?
That's
So I
fundamental.
had been, you know, kind of tucked that in the back of my head and thinking about that as well. So I think that would be a reason to keep that as a means of egress.
Yeah.
It could just be exit only. There's no entrance into that. It could just be an emergency exit tower at the mall around Breakwater Marketplace. All
Yeah.
kinds of towers to control your coming and goings and the safety for the occupants of the building. So that's kind of what I was thinking, why that would be an advantage to keep that stair tower.
To make sure I'm following you, so you're saying keeping this stair, but having it simply as an exit point, so you're not doing any kind of entrance through here, it's just an
That's right.
emergency exit,
Yeah.
and that's why it suffices for fire code as an egress
Mhm.
if you need it.
Right.
If we
But-
eliminate the elevator.
If we eliminate the elevator, the stairwell, though, and I think, so you're saying, what both you guys are saying is that we've got this stairwell there, even if it's kind of funky, it's a stairwell, and
Mhm.
keeping that saves us having to build another stairwell.
Yes.
And then the elevator is like its own separate thing, which for the sort of equity point of view, as much as anything, probably should be at the other end of the building, so you can come in that building even if, you know, if for whatever reason you're unable to climb the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm asking for a little clarity on is this exterior wall, so these concrete bricks, is that the exterior of the stair tower, or is there brick behind it? That'll be the exterior?
This room was a freestanding building.
Oh,
The MET was a freestanding building.
They connected.
Then they connected them.
yeah,
So you have two outside walls and two inside walls that would now be outside walls, and they were never designed to be outside walls. And there's all kinds of funny stuff happening
Yeah.
with the foundations because it was an inside wall, not an
funky
outside wall.
footings?
There's funky footings, and then you see in the drawings, some of the elevator, or the stair shaft was built on top of this wall, and when we tear down this part of the building, that's gonna be an unbraced wall, and it's too bad Carmen's not here, because she can explain this way better than I can. So there will be some complexities there, and they're not,
Yeah,
again,
we'll ask her about
there's nothing that's not able to be overcome. We can reinforce concrete walls, we do it all the time. But then we need to provide some insulation to this wall, some sort of a finish, whether it's brick veneer or something else. And then it comes up and it's a little bit out of plane with the brick above. Again, we can deal with all of those things because we're gonna need to wrap essentially the three sides at the base, about 10 feet up.
So are there alternatives to having the stairwell there? I understand you need an egress. I guess I understand that, but what happens if you take out the elevator, you take out the?
then the
that's-
unknowns, at least it's,
Well, and then the point that Wax just made, would you say that again? 'Cause we're kind of having.
We're dissecting.
That if this stair tower is taken off and the egress stair is built
Inside.
inside.
Then you just have the old exterior wall there
Yes.
that is, presuming it's in good shape and it's been covered for 30
Maybe in better
years.
shape than
Well,
the
it's
rest of the
maybe
building.
it's in, appears to be in pretty good shape. I think it's from the basement level to midway up the first floor, it's been painted.
Yeah.
So, it's another challenge that we can strip that and do a walnut blast, shot blast or something and get it back to pretty close. It probably would always have a little bit of a haze, but we can remove those things. But again, that adds cost, so.
Just graffiti.
You could graffiti it, yep. Keith's gonna do a Sunday art project.
So one question, Tyler. Would it be too much trouble to keep parallel path? I know we're
No,
just gonna.
I think we need to.
Yeah, so you have the concept plans that we're gonna create and the outline spec could have kind of two options, and then let the cost estimators
Yeah,
work their
absolutely.
magic.
For a planning purpose, whether it's on the inside corner where I showed it on the first sketch plan I did, or if it's at the end of the hall, it's really not a big deal, and you end up with another room on each floor, so it's not a huge deal.
I mean, I think we can tend to agree that the elevator needs to be over the other side, and then concentrate on the difference between a stair inside and a stair, utilize the existing stair and what repairs we have to do to make that happen.
Yep.
That seems to be where the comparison.
Yeah.
And obviously, you want to do what's the, most economical and functional. I think both stairs would be very functional, but
Yes,
it comes down to the economics a little bit.
Yeah, I think the stairs for us, whether it's in or out, functionality, it's gonna be the same, so it really does come down to economics. I think moving the elevator is something that really should be on the south side of the site, but that's simply for the accessibility and function of the building, security.
The only other thing that has to do with functionality, but has to do with functionality of the rest of the parcel is the location, the closeness to that parking.
Yeah, I had one of our landscape architects take a look at that layout, and I can show people, if we've got a little bit of time afterwards, that how do we make this work? We did some preliminary parking calculations based on some assumptions of what's going in the building. We know the first floor and the second floor, and we made some assumptions on the basement. We're within 5 spots of making it all work, so I think we're in a pretty good spot to have a nice conversation with the town. So we've got some thoughts on how to kind of ease that corner, make it so that essentially this back piece becomes a little bit of parking and connectivity, so that you're not stuck in going into one parking lot, not finding it, and have to go out to Washington and around. So I think we've got some good thoughts there. But it certainly does make that corner more congested. I mean, there's only so far we can push things kind of around on the site and have it still fit.
When would we see those ideas? Oh, you have them with you? Okay, great. Just curious.
Now too soon? Or,
I thought you were saying that.
oh, no, it's more like, I have to leave at 6:30 tonight, so if we've got some time, I'll go with it, and if not, I'll leave you a copy.
Okay.
Let's make time.
I'm sorry?
Let's make time.
So is the recommendation then at this point, based on the discussion, that there's agreement that the elevator winds up being down at the south side? It's now more a function of the stairway.
Yep.
To my
And I think-
point. It's whether it's inside or it's outside, and you're saying that's really number crunching at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. It really becomes number crunching, and I do want to have our structural engineer, and if Carmen wants to take a look at it as well, just really take a hard look at it, because unbraced CMU walls that are probably not reinforced make me nervous. We've had to deal with them in the past, and they're just harder to do, but like I said, we've added reinforcing to these types of things and insulated them. Strange doesn't concern me, it's just adds expense.
Okay.
So I think that's a good approach, though. It's just run it side by side, and we'll see which one is the most economical.
Okay.
And I don't think anything changes on the site plan. I think to make this piece work, we have to make some changes over at the entrance regardless, so I think that's kind of a given.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions regarding this? Okay. Good. Thank you. move on. In terms of the cost piece, is that something, Tyler, that you guys would put together like a preliminary on that? Obviously,
Yeah,
that would
we
be
have
part of the
people-
cost estimator.
We're still gonna be doing our own cost estimate through this process.
Right.
We've started that at the office, and we started putting together the backup page for the independent estimator. We have to do a CSI breakdown, so we break it down by specification section, kind of give them some bullet points of what our anticipated finishes and scope of work are. I mean, it's a little bit more challenging because we're not writing specifications exactly, but I think the person that you found is pretty good experience in this, so he's should be able to handle it without much trouble, and they can always call us, so we're comparing apples to apples.
Let me press pause here and add some clarity to that. So Mike has talked with somebody. I know that we've got somebody else local in terms of an independent cost estimator. At this point, we're looking at talking to individuals, and probably we'll bid this out. It will wind up being a recommendation that we would make to the board and a decision. So I want to be really clear. We had some email exchanges today, which I think were helpful in terms of gathering information. But I wanted to remind the committee that it's all about just gathering information, and that's all.
What's the time frame for
We're planning on
sending
having,
something to the board and needing the board to?
Great question, and I don't know that I have an answer.
Is it August?
I think it says in the charter.
Is that,
Okay, yeah.
well, it's the completed package by August,
Yeah,
correct?
we need the cost estimate before that, though.
yes.
Yeah, so we need, I mean, I'm just wondering when we have to make a decision, and given that the board does not meet in July, this is something the board has to do next week also.
That's a question.
I would suggest that the cost estimator is gonna be under $15,000. So board policy does not require that it get bid out. I would pick 2 or 3, you can invite them in to sit down and chat, show us your credentials and pick one. And recommend that to the board and ask the board to hire.
I would suggest even maybe the board give that authority to the superintendent to make that decision if you don't want to meet and make it. I mean, you could have a group comes in and meets with
Or
those
we
people and
could
makes
give
a
the board
recommendation.
could give the authority to this committee to do that.
That way you could do that at your meeting on another agenda item.
Yeah.
Do that at your
Yeah,
meeting
right.
on the 11th, and we can be moving forward.
Yeah, I just want to make sure anything gets on that 11th agenda that we need.
Yeah.
Okay, good call out. That makes a lot of sense. And certainly trying to keep things moving. That makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah, because the cost estimate has to be done in the first couple of weeks of July.
Yeah.
Okay. fair enough.
And we're putting our package together, that'll be ready end of the month, first week of July, so everyone's kind of hustling toward that goal.
Okay. All right then, moving on. Building systems review. So Tyler had provided a sheet at the end of the last meeting. I apologize if we kind of ran out of time, but hopefully everybody had an opportunity to review that.
Do you want to move that?
Would you like to share? Sure. You can take them at the end.
Do you want to walk us through this briefly, Tyler? And
Sure. So one of our mechanical engineers went through kind of our scope, the building, and put together 3 different options. These kind of cover the extremes. These aren't the cheap bottom of the barrel systems, but it gives you a fairly good energy efficient system to start. And then he put together 2 other options that took it up to kind of the more, a little bit more energy efficient with the geothermal, going to some more heat pumps. And these are rough costs based on square footage, so these aren't detailed cost estimates. They're more budgeting purposes to kind of get an order of magnitude. And I can do my best to kind of walk through. Keith, jump in, probably provide as much or more information. So the first one was the geothermal water to air heat pumps. This one I think would probably not be the one that we would recommend. It becomes a little bit more invasive. It actually involves drilling wells. They get pumped into some heat exchangers in the building, and then air conditioning is generated through that. So we would be primarily an electricity-based building. We'd be taking heat and storing heat from the ground outside. It's very energy efficient, it would pay for itself over time, but there is, I don't know, almost $200,000 more in upfront installation costs. We've done a bunch of these throughout the state, and I know you've got a couple different versions here. This has been priced out as a closed loop system. So that means that we drill a bunch of shallower holes, they put essentially PEX tubing, plastic tubing in the ground, we encase it in bentonite, a nice highly conductive material that will take the heat and the cold out of the ground. I think all of these have air handlers up in the 4th floor penthouse. Trying to utilize existing space, which allows us to stay out of putting equipment on roofs and having to do major structural reinforcing on those upper floors and getting columns and other things back down through the building.
Chiller on the ground would be a chiller or a cooling tower, and then how does that affect our site plan?
They called out for a condensing unit located on the outside on the ground, so it wouldn't be a cooling tower, it'd be a condensing unit.
But would we have to build an enclosure for that?
Not for that, I don't believe.
Do you have any idea what size?
I don't know how many tons he's talking about.
capacity?
I would be
Did Matt
comfortable
do
just
this?
asking Keith to
Matt
make a
did.
recommendation at our next meeting.
I'll talk to Matt.
Yeah, Matt can do, it was Matt and Sean in our office. Matt will know, he's working on this.
and two, but if over the next 15 years, that turns out to be a more costly system than the 3, then we have to be looking at it.
Yeah.
It really comes down to electricity and your gas costs in both of these.
They're gonna be similar in both of those, or not?
No, I think option 2 will use more electricity and less gas.
That's the kind of question I'm asking, so yeah, that's,
So how are you gonna balance your projection for electrical cost versus gas?
I don't know.
I mean, Keith has done so well by the district in the past. I'm very content just to let him make a recommendation to us and then us move on now and use our time on something else.
I just had one other question. I mean, Tyler, was there any consideration about tying into the sewer thermal, any other options? Or were
There's
they
a-
just prohibitive, and that's why we?
Yeah, we didn't put that out as an option. It was something that we looked at though, but it adds a significant run of pipe because we're likely gonna connect somewhere over in the middle school to do that. Well, I guess you could run a second set of pipes.
It's a
So
lot, this building's a lot closer to where
Yeah,
we
but
were
the-
tying
I mean,
in.
the sewer thermal's an add-on unit on that building, so
Yeah.
I think it seems to be remote because we need that building.
Yeah, I know, but
I would guess that it would
people might ask.
come
the
in
question.
somewhere
Yeah, that's
between
true.
the cost of option 1 and option 2, because it's closer. It may be a way to
we can certainly
not
take a
have
look
to
at
drill
it.
wells.
Yeah, if you,
I mean,
the wells would
drilling
probably
20
offset the price of the.
Drilling 20
the
wells
pipe.
is expensive,
Yeah.
so. I'll talk to Matt and see what he has.
Okay. To Marcia's point though, I mean, could that be a deliverable for you for the next meeting, Keith, is,
Well, the
give
next
us a
meeting's
recommendation?
not tomorrow.
That's a deal.
That's a deal, yeah.
Not
That's the
tomorrow.
one known.
Yes.
All right.
Just
Mike?
one quick question, might be a dumb question, but we're assuming that AC in the whole building, is that what we're thinking here? Is that what these systems?
I think this gave the capability for AC for the whole building. Figured that central office is a year-round.
Yep, so that means
That
does
needs
Zenith
it.
have AC now, or?
We don't have heat now.
Oh.
How they turn it on.
Well, it's just, the central office now has portable air conditioners again.
Yes, we do not have air conditioning.
I mean, is that something, so the way it's gonna work, the central offices are on the top floor, and there's some in the middle floor.
Yep.
Does it even make sense not to air condition that? or-
I don't know, are you year-round?
No.
No, so, I'm not sure, I mean, we can
That's a
certainly.
good question.
We can certainly come up when we can zone that so that you're just
And
there
that's
AC. But
Save energy.
the question will be, what do we want to do for the basement? If we put the capacity in for a future tenant or?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. If it's gonna be marketable, it ought to have air conditioning, and I think being in the basement, probably the
Probably one of the-
dehumidification would be good.
Yeah.
So, I guess, so, Keith's gonna make a recommendation, and then that's gonna be all reflective in your outline spec. And maybe we
Yes.
can include some of these options, like second floor, how can,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah, it's really just gonna be a function of the size of the condensing units and.
Or, you know, you might be able to eliminate, or it depends if it's all central or multiple, right?
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Image in the chart.
That means somebody's gonna have to walk further,
Yeah.
basically.
Spots for a minute.
Anything else before we adjourn? We good? She's out early. All right, thank you, Tyler. And we
Wow.
can make it job for the last couple of meetings.
Start it.
All right, thank you, everyone. Matt, how can we help you? This is,
Thanks, Tyler.
Oh, I think, actually, we can leave it, it's fine.
Sure.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I guess we could put our chairs back, would be good, probably the most helpful thing to do.
Where the chairs go back?
Just by any circular table, it's fine.
Yeah.